Good afternoon and welcome back. This is US Home Talk. We are live every Wednesday at noon and on demand at ushometalk.com or wherever you guys find your podcasts. We are your hosts, Marcus Walgrave with the South Dakota Home Team, powered by Hague Realtors, Jason Walgrave with Walgrave Real Estate Group at RE/MAX Advantage Plus. Always in studio, making sure we have a killer show, is Evan Little, our amazing producer. We'll be taking all you guys' questions during today's show. Anything and everything real estate. The call-in number is 612-234-7585, or leave us a message in the comments section on Facebook. Good afternoon, gentlemen. How are we doing today?
Doing fantastic. Fantabulous.
Fantabulous.
Yep. That's a new word.
That's a new
Just
one.
made it up.
I was going to say, it kind of sounded a little on the new side. A little new side, you know?
Overson's going to join us here. He said he's running about 15 late from the appointment that he's in, so he'll catch up with us in a bit.
That's going to work well. So we are going to have a hot topic today, Jason. We are going to be talking about the NAR settlement. Try to give out some good information here. If you are familiar with what is going on, there are some new practices that went into place last Wednesday, August 17th. So we're just going to try to give you guys some basic information, what this pertains to home sellers, what it means for home buyers, and just try to cover as much as we can. This is obviously a topic, Jason, where I mean, how much time do you have?
Exactly.
How much time do you have? How much do we want to cover? If you guys want to, really dive into this specific topic and try to get as much information as you can, maybe try to answer as many questions that you may have. The NAR has a great resource. Go to their website. And obviously, this is a very, very important topic that's going on, and you're going to be able to easily find some great information off of there. So we're going to be pulling a lot of our information that we're going to be talking about today from the NAR website. But as always, I personally, I'm not an attorney. Jason, I don't believe that you are either. So if you if you have legal advice, you definitely want to reach out to an attorney for something like that. If you are a realtor out there, make sure that you know what your broker is doing in the practices that they have. Not everybody has the same model moving forward, right? I think that's something that's kind of come up here, and so just make sure that you are doing one, you're following what NAR settlement has laid out for you, but then two, if you have questions, if you're a broker owner, if you have questions, you probably want to reach out to your attorney, and if you're a realtor within a brokerage, you want to reach out to your broker, your managing broker, and ask that individual the questions that you may have to get answers and to see how that specific brokerage wants to operate their business. So, but in a nutshell, we are going to try to get out as much information we can, really focus on like home buyers and home sellers. What does the NAR settlement mean for you? So what do you think, Jason? You want to start with home sellers or home buyers? I mean, I feel like we need to talk about home sellers, because those are the plaintiffs against NAR. So maybe that's something that we should start with.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. Okay. So again, a great resource, to guys to get all of your information is to hop on the NAR website, and looks like I got to turn on my gain a little bit here. Getting some directions here. I hope that makes it sound a little bit better. Here's what the NAR settlement means for you being as a home seller. As a home seller, you have a wide range of choices when it comes to listing your home. Agents who are realtors are trusted sources of advice and stand ready to help you navigate this complex process. What the settlement means for you as a homeowner is you still have the choice of offering compensation to buyer brokerages. That has always been the case, but this is something that we want to make sure that the sellers know that you still have that choice. You may consider doing this as a way of marketing your home or making your listing more attractive to buyers. So that's something that for sellers out there. Your agent must conspicuously disclose to you and obtain your approval for any payment or offer of payment that a listing broker will make to another broker acting for buyers. So what's that mean? There's a good probability that when a seller reaches out to me and says, "Hey, I would like to hire you, Marcus, and for you to provide your real estate services to help us sell our property." In our brokerage has our specific brokerage has policies on what our compensation amount is to provide those type of services to a seller. However, yes, I would love to be the individual who represents the buyer on your sale. I feel like our marketing plans create those opportunities. However, there are a lot of really exceptional other realtors in the market that I'm in. I know the same thing with you, Jason, and markets across the nation. There are a number of very, very good realtors out there that are representing able and willing buyers. So it has always been our belief at our brokers that it is in the seller's best interest to attract all able and willing buyers, and that is how you're going to net the most money on your transaction. So in the event that does happen, if a buyer is already working with another brokerage, it would then allow listing brokerage to compensate buying brokerage for the services that they're providing their client. This settlement is just now specifically stating that it must conspicuously disclose to you and obtain your approval for any payment or offer of payment that is a listing broker will make to another broker acting for buyers. Listing contract. I think that definitely covers that information, but I think the conspicuously is really being emphasized there. And so some of the forum chains that we've seen in our market, just a lot more information out there, just simply stating, hey, compensation is negotiable. Always has been, still is, but we're just now putting it in a dozen different places that it wasn't prior to, just to make sure that the consumer knows that. This disclosure must be made to you in writing in advance of any payment or agreement to pay another broker acting for buyers. Must specify the amount or rate of such payment. If you choose to approve an offer of compensation, there are changes how this can happen. You as a seller can still make an offer compensation, but your agent cannot include it on the MLS. I think that's one of the main points of this settlement, right? Prior to, there was a clear cooperation between brokerages. I shouldn't say we, but brokerages used the, for lack of a better word, the vessel of the MLS to share that information. That a seller or a brokerage is cooperating with other brokerages in the event that they bring the other half of the transaction. They're representing the other side of a deal. Your agent can advertise your listing via off MLS platforms such as social media, flyers, and websites. This would be an example to where it cannot be on the MLS, something like this, but however, on individual agents' website, that can be shared. So if I have a listing and a seller, after going over all the details with the seller and sharing with them the benefits of cooperating with other brokerages and trying to maximize your buyer pool, in the event that another brokerage does have that buyer, I would advise them to compensate that brokerage for the services that they're providing the buyer at that time. If a seller says, yes, I agree, I think that makes total sense. I believe that's how I'm going to net the most money. I believe that's how I'm going to have the best transaction possible. On my personal page as a real estate agent, I am allowed to, in a sense, state if my listing, that seller is compensating buyer's brokerages. So that is something to where, if you are a buyer out there and or buyer's agent, and you're looking to, try to obtain some of that information, that's a platform that you can find it on individual agents' websites. You as a seller can still offer buyer concessions on the MLS. For example, concessions for buyer closing costs. Now, I think once Mike hops on, maybe we can kind of put him in the hot seat and see if he can provide some great information about that as well. I think that there's some misunderstandings of the dynamics of that. And so hopefully we can kind of cover some of that down the road. So what doesn't change because of the settlement? Agents who are realtors are here to help you navigate the process of selling your home and are ethically obligated to work in your best interest. Doesn't change. That's what we were doing in the past, that we're going to continue to do in the future. Compensation for your agent remains fully negotiable. It was in the past, still is today, and will be in the future. And you have choices. Work with your agent to understand the full range of these choices when selling your home, which will help you make the best possible decisions for the needs that you have. So, that's something that what a seller can anticipate from the NAR settlement.
Is that everything?
You got a lot to share on this one, Jason. Huh?
No, I do. I have thoughts. I'm waiting for you to conclude everything, and then I would love to give my thoughts. Is that all of it?
Well, that's kind of the information that there's so much more. Right? This is just kind of trying to highlight the main points of it. The plaintiffs, it was sellers that filed this suit against the NAR, and the argument was that because brokerages were cooperating with each other, that was in a sense removing their opportunity to negotiate compensation, but which was never the case. And NAR, that is one of the things with the settlement, is NAR continues to say there was no wrongdoing in the practices that we were doing prior to this, and we continue to as NAR continues to take that stance, and that's part of the settlement is that is how it'll be perceived, simply because it was negotiable in the past. There was never fixed rates that NAR said, hey, you have to offer X percent. You have to offer 20% or whatever the number is. That never was the case prior to the lawsuit, and so but maybe it wasn't conspicuously disclosed enough. That transparency, I think, is extremely important, and if this is going to create a better transparency, then without any doubt, it's going to be a benefit to the consumer.
Yeah, I think, and I get the question probably 2 or 3 times a week for the last 4 months. How's the NAR settlement? How's that affecting your business? And what's changed for you? And the answer to that question is it hasn't really affected our business at all. And it really hasn't changed how we do business. And so, and then people have additional questions. Well, what do you mean by that? So let's summarize the NAR settlement. 3 main points. One, you have to disclose how much you're paying out or offering to a buyer broker. So that has to be disclosed. It's got to be clear between the listing agent and the seller. What's the offer if there is any. Reality is, there never has been a requirement to pay out buyers agents, but sellers, if they've got a really good listing agent, they'll let them know that 92% of buyers are represented by agents. 92% of buyers are represented by agents. So the benefit for sellers today and in the past and in the future is that if you offer to pay their agent, that has, like they have been for the last 40 or 50 years, you're going to incentivize the most amount of buyers to your house. Most amount of buyers, most amount of exposure means highest sale price. So if you potentially eliminate 92% of the buyers because you're not willing to pay the listing agent, or the buyer's agent rather, what does that mean for a sale price? I believe wholeheartedly that it will result in a lower net. It will result in a lower sale price, which will result in a lower net to the seller. Most of our sellers, their goal is to net the most amount of money in the sale of their home. So that's that's the first point. We've been doing that for over 10 years. We've been disclosing crystal clear to the sellers as listing agents. Here's what we agree on: a payout that's usually determined by the specific market that we're in. This market, is typically 2.7. If you go down to Mankato, maybe it's 2.5. Western Wisconsin is 2.4. So it's market specific, right? We've been doing that for over 10 years, so that's really no change for us. A buyer agreement. You have to have an agreement with a buyer in order to show a buyer a property. So to tour homes with an agent, you've got to have a written agreement. Examples of that could be exclusive right to represent or non-exclusive right to represent. A couple different examples. We have had that policy in place for well over 10 years as well. So in a part of that agreement explains and discloses what the buyer's responsibility is as far as commission payment. It also says in there that it'll be offset by any offering by the listing agent. But these are all forms that we've been using for well over 10 years. Doesn't really affect us. The third point is you can't advertise on the MLS what the buyer broker payout is. It's I've got an opinion on that, but that's a big change, right? And so, kind of, right? But it doesn't mean you can't offer it. So a seller can tell us, hey, we want to offer 2.7. Great. We can put a sign right when you walk in the front door, 2.7 payout to buyer brokers. We can advertise on social media, on Facebook, on our websites. We can advertise in the newspaper. We can advertise emails, text message, anywhere we want, just not on the MLS. So it doesn't really, it hasn't really changed how we do business. We certainly have a little more paperwork, and we have more to explain. But at the end of the day, if your goal is to net the most amount of money in the sale of your home, then I believe that offering a buyer broker payout is going to do that for you. If I was to list my home today, I would offer 2.7% payout to the buyer's broker. Why?
In your market.
In my market. Why would I do that? Because I believe that by doing that will net me more money than if I don't. Keep in mind, 92% of buyers are represented by agents. So why would you potentially eliminate that number or any range of that number by not offering a payout?
Let's kind of convert that percentage into a realistic number, right? I mean, not likely you're gonna have 100 interested buyers, which is simple math. Then it's easy to say, okay, well you just potentially removed 92% or 92 of the 100 buyers. Okay, well that's however 10 interested buyers, yeah, definitely. Okay, let's usually probably need about 20 interested buyers to before you can kind of get a deal done. I mean, I always kind of feel like that's the sweet spot. You get in somewhere in that 10 to 14 showings, and all of a sudden, an offer appears in your inbox, and so let's say there are 20 interested buyers, and 92% of them are omitted. What does that leave you? That leaves you with less than 2 able and willing buyers. And so that's kind of the to your point where, like, if you are reducing your buyer pool potentially reducing your buyer pool that significantly, well then that obviously is going to put in a position where multiple offers probably not going to happen. If there's only two, only 2 of the 20 are looking to see your property because they may be in that position where the buyer needs seller to compensate the buyer's brokerage for their services. So just some simple numbers there. I mean, you're reducing the buyer pool quite a bit. And if I can, I'll jump into the home buyers, Jason. We kind of gave some of that information about the home sellers. Home buyers, like you said.
One last thought, Marcus.
Oh, sorry.
On sellers, real quick. So we've got a local home builder. They probably build somewhere in that 80 to 100 homes a year. They're in this Twin Cities market, and they put out some ads. Some advertising for the last couple weeks. Fantastic advertising, by the way, on social media and their website and some different places. But the ad they put out was breaking news. If you're an agent, there's no need to call us, no need to ask. We're always paying out 2.7. So a question you should ask yourself, if you're someone that has to sell one home, shouldn't you look at the person or the company that's selling 80 to 100 homes a year? They're expert home sellers. They're experts in selling homes, right? Because they're selling 80 to 100 a year. They're advertising to the entire world, we're going to pay out 2.7. Why are they doing that? Because they know and believe that by doing that, they will net more money and sell more homes. So, you can just look at one example of, you got this company that's selling 80 to 100 homes a year, and this is what they're doing, and they've got all this experience every single year selling homes. As an individual or a one person, got Overson looking in the window. As a one seller, that's a great example. Look at someone or an entity that's selling that many homes. So
he's alive. Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. I mean, leaders in the market, right?
There's a link? I think it's sent a link. Yeah, he sent a link. I'll resend it. Sorry, go ahead.
No, keep an eye on the leaders in your market. Who are the big sellers, and what are they continuing to do with their business model? A great example, Jason. I think we always kind of want, and that's one of the great benefits of working with a realtor, right? We are able to provide that information, data to sellers to say this isn't my opinion on the market analysis on your property. I'm pulling actual data. And so, and then I'm using my expertise that I've had over the last 10 plus years, in your case, 20 plus years, to guide you on where this market analysis valuation falls, coming up with that. So, great piece of advice. See what the leaders in your market are doing. I think that's awesome. Good point to make there.
To that point, Marcus, it's that's a great point to bring up. So when you're determining value of your home, and I've had this discussion with sellers before. You know what? This is your home. You love it. You've raised your family here. You have all these memories. So let's talk about the 3 different opinions on your home's value. There's your opinion, Mr. or Mrs. Or Mr. and Mrs. Home seller. There's my opinion on what your home's value is. And then there's the market's opinion based on market data, based on sold comparables. Now, you might think it's one number, I might think it's another, but the data is what it's truly worth because it's based on sold comparables. And so sometimes those numbers are similar. Sometimes they're different. But you got to go to the data. You got to go to the actual market data to determine what your home is worth.
Great points there. One of the things I know Sid is going to jump into the home buyers, with that, and so here's what the NAR settlement means for the home buyers. I'm just going to read some of the key points. As you already mentioned, a home buyer must sign a written agreement with agent before touring homes. that is a new practice that everybody will need to continue to move forward. But something that you said, Jason, you work in the Minnesota market. I'm in the South Dakota market. I'm just going to speak for South Dakota, for my state. The South Dakota Real Estate Commission has had an exclusive contract to represent buyer for over 25 years in the state of South Dakota. So, why am I saying that, and why did you say that you've had these contracts in place for over 10 years? It's because there are a majority of the states in the U.S., their state's real estate commission did not even have
Good point.
a contract to represent buyer. So, when you see this story being told and about this lawsuit, it's completely understandable. I mean, if you were in a market where contracts were not needed to be in place for you to provide a service during a real estate transaction, nobody knew how somebody's getting compensated, how much they're getting compensated. Yeah, I can see how that consumer would be pretty upset about it. And that's, when you make the comment about, a lot of your business model that you guys have with your brokerage or your team, or just you personally with your specific real estate business, it may not be changing very much. It's because of that reason. We have been fortunate to be in markets and states where there was already that insight of saying, hey, you know what, there needs to be transparency on compensation. Let's get this contract put into place and out there. But one thing that is unique now is that it must be signed prior to touring homes. Mm-hmm. That wasn't how it was in our market. And I don't see that's a I don't see anything wrong with that. I mean, Jason, you and I have talked about this all the time. If there's a prospecting buyer who wants to work with us, what's the first thing we say? We don't say, here, let me send you 3 homes and I'll meet you in a half hour. It's, when are you available to come sit down and meet with me? Mm-hmm. When can we sit down and discuss what your needs are? When can we sit down and when I can share to you the services that I offer, the services that my team offers, the services that my brokerage offers to clients that we work for buyers. That was always for us, it was our business model to do that. Let's do that. Let's meet first. Don't wait until you fall in love with a home online on my website. If you're thinking about buying in spring of 2025, let's meet today. Let's schedule that appointment. Let's have these conversations. Let's answer questions. Let's create the strategic plan. That's what an exceptional realtor is going to do for you. And so something like that, that model doesn't really change for myself. It just now puts me in a position where it's like, hey, consumer, we have to do it. We have to sit down. We got to have the conversation. We got to talk about these things. I was already going to do it anyways, but now you don't really have the opportunity to just say, "Can you just show me the 5 homes?" It's like, no, I can't. Sorry, but trust me, it always has been to your benefit not to go run and look at 5 homes without having these meetings first. And so now, it's a great change. It's a great change. I
think Marcus, you make a really good point. If you're a buyer out there, you're going to be a buyer soon. This gives you an opportunity to find a top level experienced real estate agent in your market. And how will you know? How will you know that they are? It's all about their buyer presentation, right? They need to be able to clearly sit down with you and show you their value. And what and how they're going to represent you in the best possible way. And if an agent can't do that, you got to ask yourself why. Why can't you explain to me why I should hire you as my agent? And if I'm a buyer, how are you going to represent me? What are you going to do for me? And so it's I like this part of it, of the change, because it will force real estate agents to become very, very good at what they do or not be in the business anymore. And it's just, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, you're talking about people buying or selling likely the largest asset of their life. You should be working with the best in the business. And there's, not all agents are good at what they do. They're not, and so this gives you an opportunity to, hey, all right, I got to go into contract. I have to have an agreement with my agent. Who are they? Who are they, and what are they about, and and how are they going to represent me? Well, now you have an opportunity to know that as a buyer. So I think this is a good thing. Again, we've been doing it for 2 decades anyway, getting buyer representation agreements in place before we show homes. Same reason we make sure that they get pre-approved with Mike Overson, to make sure that one, they know what we're going to be doing for them on the real estate side, and two, that they know what they can purchase and what it's going to cost them. And so I don't mind this part of it all. I think that it actually is going to help the consumers out, because you're going to get better service. Because if an agent can't show you their value, you're not going to hire them, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, it is a good thing. And you don't want to be distracted while you're looking at homes. When you're looking at home, when you should be, in a sense, asking your agent what type of services they're going to be providing you. That's going to eliminate that event that was happening. When they were just calling up, anybody and say, "Hey, will you show me these 5 homes?" They're not really focused on what the agent is, who they are, what the services they're provided on. They're just so hyper focused on the homes, and then the next thing you know, that they're well, I mean, again, in some cases they weren't even under contract. They were just moving forward with writing up a purchase contracts. But in our states, that was something that a brokerage, likely was requiring, and that the state commission, real estate commission, was offering. The buyer agreement must include 4 components concerning compensation: a specific and conspicuous disclosure of the amount of rate of compensation the real estate agent will receive and how this amount will be determined. Compensation that is objective, has to be dollar, X flat fee, X percent, X hourly rate, and not open-ended. Cannot say buyer broker compensation shall be whatever the amount the seller is offering to the buyer. A term that prohibits the agent from receiving compensation from brokerage services from any source that exceeds the amount or rate agreed to in the agreement with the buyer. I think that's another good one, right? Again, I mean, if you sit down and you're informing your buyer, this is the compensation percentage that our brokerage charges buyer consumers, and this is the number. Well, then that brokerage cannot receive any more that was already agreed upon. So if there is like some sort of like seller bonus, like an extra 10 grand to the realtor who brings me the buyer, if that bonus exceeds what was already agreed upon with buyer, well, then that's not acceptable. So I think that's a good one. And the last one is
sorry, Marcus, or you need to disclose, and that needs to be agreed upon between agent and buyer. So you can accept a bonus above and beyond whatever you have with your buyer agreement, but it has to be then disclosed and agreed upon between agent and buyer. So it's all about, I mean,
agreed to
in writing, all
like
of these
an
things,
amendment to an original contract that was already maybe set in place.
Right. A lot of these things are disclosure related, because Marcus, what you pointed out a little bit ago is many of the states throughout the U.S., they don't have buyer representation agreements. There's no disclosure. Buyers don't know what agents are getting paid or who's getting paid or what. And we have been disclosing all of these things for, I mean, I think it's 2 decades, 20 plus years. So there's some good stuff. Disclosure is good. Buyers and sellers and agents, everybody needs to understand and know who's getting paid and how they're getting paid. I mean, transparency is really important. I mean, Mike, this from the mortgage side of things. You guys are, you guys have more disclosures than, can't even think of another agency or industry that has more disclosures than the lending side, which is good. I mean, it's a complicated transaction, right? A loan or mortgage or a real estate purchase or sale. And we just got to make sure that consumers understand it, and disclosing all of these things are helpful. They're good.
Yeah. Yeah. The loan industry went through this back in 2010 and 2011 with TRID, right?
TRID.
The real estate the real estate world now is just going through that type of thing now. But what's so funny with South Dakota and Minnesota is our entire careers we've had these types of disclosures in place already because of our state laws. So this came out and this is coming up and we're just like we're scratching our heads right away. Like, so what's different? You know what I mean? We're like, well, what's different? You know, not realizing that other states didn't have like the transparency and the disclosures that we've had for 20 plus years now. So yeah, it's going to be a bigger deal to those states that didn't have this before. But to us, we're just like, okay, so we just keep doing what we're doing. You know, we just keep doing what we've been doing for the last 20 years, you know, be transparent with our clients.
Yeah, you're so right. I've got a good friend of mine from Utah, and after the ruling, after the verdict came out, you know, he called up and he was very concerned. You know, and I'm, you know, and I was like, well, I'm like, is it really changed that much? I'm like, why are you so concerned? Well, we don't have any of those things. We don't have this and we don't have that. And so for him, it was a big change. It was a big difference. But Minnesota and South Dakota, not really. I mean, the only big thing, you know, for us is that you can't advertise the broker payout on the MLS. But even that's not that big of a deal because you can have it everywhere else. You have it on social media and Facebook and advertising websites and in the house and signs and lock boxes, and you can mow 2.7% in the lawn. You know, and people pull up, they're like, all right, we know what this one is paying out.
I think you hand out temporary tattoos, you know, and give to the kids as they come visit the house, you know, get them to slap, you know, the 2.7 payout tattoo on their arm or something, maybe their forehead.
Another component includes 4 of those components. The last one is the conspicuous statement that broker fees and commissions are fully negotiable and not set by law. Again, was always how business was operated before, but this focus on the conspicuous statement, you know, just needs to be added on the contracts that are already in place for the states that have them, and if they don't, if you're a state who never did have them, that is a statement that needs to be, you know, out there. Written agreements apply to both in-person and live virtual home tours. You do not need a written agreement if you're speaking to an agent at an open house. So if you're a buyer out there and you're like, well, God, does this mean I can't even, you know, talk to the host at the open house? No, that's not the case. You can still talk to them about that, and you can still ask them about the services that they provide. A seller may agree to offer compensation to your agent. And again, just to your point exactly, Jason, it's just prohibited to be shared on the MLS. And you can still accept concessions from the seller, such as offers to pay your closing costs, which I think, you know, this is a good timing. Mike, you're in here. But if you're a buyer out there and you're wondering what the value that a realtor can bring to the table for you, I'm just going to run over through some things. If you want a full list, I'll give you a list of 179 ways agents who are realtors are worth every penny of their compensation. But just to highlight some pre-listing activities, there's about, you know, 20 plus there, listing appointment presentation, you know, 50, 60 there, offer, contracts, inspections, home inspections, the appraisal process for closing, follow up after closings, counseling sessions, you know, building relationship, the resources that we've acquired with vendors and subcontractors within the industry, you know, so there's a lot there for the value if you're a buyer out there to continue to work with buyers agents. Mike, here is one thing that I think is getting brought up, you know, with this NAR settlement and how it affects financing. I think one thing that is it kind of get brought up is, you know, what are interested party contributions? IPC is the acronym. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and FHA specifically limits on how much a seller or broker can contribute to the buyer to pay for services typically paid by the buyer. These payments are called interested party contributions. Can you shed some light on that part?
Yeah. So what they're talking about, I think of it as there's 2 lanes, right? So each loan out there, so whether it's a conventional loan, an FHA loan, VA, each loan has a requirement or a limit on how much a seller can contribute towards a buyer's costs. Okay. Before, commissions, it was just kind of understood that all real estate commissions were rolled into the price, so the buyer didn't have to worry about paying any commissions. The seller was already had that in their agreement with their current listing agent. I'm going to pay this amount in the commissions, and then the agents would split it accordingly based on whatever agreements were out there. Each loan program now, VA is still a little bit, they still got a little bit to stuff to work out there, but when we're talking about conventional and FHA loans, they will still allow the same amount of concessions to go from the seller to the buyer for closing costs. So whatever those limits are based on that loan program, you can still reach those limits. Now, if the buyer is responsible to pay a realtor's commission, a buyer's agent commission, but they want to negotiate that and have the seller pay that commission and just make it part of the price, they can still do that. And that's going to be like another lane over here, right? So let's say a conventional loan, 3% down, or excuse me, 5% down. The max that the loan allows the seller to contribute towards the buyer's closing costs is 3%. Okay. But let's say the buyer is now responsible to pay the 2.7 to the buyer's agent, but they don't have that money. What they can do is they can negotiate with the seller to also pay the buyer's agent's commissions of 2.7%. So they can, and the loan allows you to do 3% towards closing costs and another 2.7 towards buyer commissions. Or whatever that number is, right? It says, so they don't cap it at 2.7 for buyer's commissions. It could be 2%, it could be 3, it could be 3.5. They just say that as long as the commissions is normal and customary for the market, then they will not basically cap or limit the type of commissions that can be paid out from the sell side over to the buy side.
So basically what that means is that if you have a seller that is not willing or offering a buyer broker payout, for whatever reason, they're not, the buyer still wants the house, this allows them to roll in the commission into the deal. Same as if they're going to roll in closing costs, their loan closing costs into the deal. But before these changes were made to conventional FHA, commissions were not allowed to be rolled into the deal. Now they are. And so what it means for a buyer is that, you're with a buyer representation agreement, you are responsible for the commissions. I believe that most of the time, 95% or greater, seller's going to pay both sides of the commission. I believe they're going to do that because it's in their best interest. If you're in a situation where they won't, for whatever reason, there's still another option other than paying that out of pocket. You can just roll it into the deal. So it doesn't, for the consumer, again, for buyers, I think it gives them options and it puts them in a position where they've got different lanes to choose from.
Yeah.
Not a lot changes there. Buyers are not losing their opportunities for financing. I think that's very important. VA temporarily lifted some of their rules to allow for that type of transaction to happen. So if you're a VA buyer out there, as of right now, you can, if you have to, you can pay your buyer's brokerage at this time. But get some more of that information from Mike if you need to. These practices per the settlement were to go into effect on August 17th, which was last Wednesday. So just a heads up. I'm sorry, last Saturday. Excuse me. But we don't have a final approval through the courts. That is scheduled for later in the year. But all signs are pointing towards that this will likely we'll receive that final court approval on November 26th. So more to come. This is we're going to be talking about this, I'm sure, throughout this year and into next year, and provide as much information as we can on the topic for you guys. So that was good. I appreciate you guys. Thanks for coming on and kind of giving your insight on that topic. It's definitely a good one. It's a hot one, and I just want to thank you all for taking your time to tune in live and your support of U.S. Home Talk. As always, you guys can find our show, today's show, and all of our past shows on our website, ushometalk.com, or wherever you guys find your podcasts. This is Marcus Walgrave, Jason Walgrave, and Mike Overson. Have yourself a blessed week.